So my name's Professor Sarah Tabrizi. I'm a Professor of Neurology at the UCL Queen Square Institute of Neurology. I'm also the Director of the UCL Huntington's Disease Centre, a PI in the Dementia Research Institute, and a consultant neurologist at the National Hospital for Neurology and Neurosurgery. So I did biochemistry and then I did medicine. And when I was doing medicine, it was in my second year doing neuroanatomy and we dissected the brain, that was what really got me into neuroscience. And I then did neurology, and the combination of neuroscience that we learned at medical school and neurology made me realize that I wanted to work on the brain. So as soon as I qualified, I then did my initial medical training and then went to Queen Square to do a neurology rotation, and that's when I started my PhD at UCL. So my big focus is on trying to understand the brain, and then by understanding mechanisms of how neurodegeneration occurs, and I focus on Huntington's disease, then we will be able to make inroads to these really terrible diseases that affect brain health. I think it's a very good question, and I work on Huntington's disease, which is a devastating genetic inherited dementia and affects people in the prime of life. And I also see patients and families, and I think that link together with doing research in the lab and basic science research and translating your discoveries. When things are tough, grants get rejected, papers get rejected, experiments don't work, I do clinic, and then it reminds me why I'm doing it. I did a clinic last week and saw a young girl who was 22 and a young girl who was 17, both with Huntington's disease. And then those are the things that drive me. You just meet the patients and families again, and then you remember why you're doing it. Absolutely. I don't think there's a single moment. I think I've been working on Huntington since my PhD for 30 years, nearly 30 years. And I think there's been several moments. When the first Huntington lowering trial with the antisense oligonucleotide that we developed and designed, when we saw the data a few months in October 2017, before it was big headlines, and we found that the antisense oligonucleotide that we delivered into spinal fluid, we had no idea what it was going to do. We didn't even know if it was going to be safe, but we found that it got to the brain, it engaged with its target and lowered the level of mutant Huntington. And I think that was a huge step forward in that we knew that we could do Huntington lowering or gene silencing. And so I think for me, and then one other was that I've been studying young people who carry the Huntington gene but are decades before onset, and they're well. And the results that came out in 2020, where we found that in a large cohort of youngsters in their 20s, that even though they carried the Huntington gene, they were 24 years before they're expected to show signs of the disease. Even though they're born with the Huntington genetic mutation, at that point, there was absolutely nothing to find compared to matched controls. And what that meant was, even though you were born with the Huntington's disease gene, at a certain point in your mid-20s, about 20 years before your predicted onset, the brains of the individuals were completely indistinguishable from matched controls. So it tells you that there's a point that if you treat then, you could prevent the disease ever occurring, and you'd keep a healthy brain. And so that's been a huge step forward, and that's actually where all my research is going now. I want to start prevention studies. One of the misconceptions is that it's going to be easy to find a treatment because it's genetic. It is genetics, it's monogenic. You can only develop Huntington's disease if you inherit the gene from an affected parent. But I think when the gene was cloned in '93, everyone thought that a treatment would be around the corner. And we were the first disease to show that a gene silencing approach could work for these toxic gain of function brain diseases. But I think everyone thought that it was going to be easy. And getting genetic therapies to the brain is not easy. And I think that Huntington's disease is as challenging as the other diseases to find treatments for. So I think that's probably one of the things that people think, oh, it's genetic, it'll be easy to find a treatment. And I think the other misconception is more in the patient community, and that many patients found, it's not really a misconception, but people found because it was genetic, that there was a lot of stigma about the disease, and people didn't want to talk about it, having Huntington's in their families because of the genetics, because it would somehow, in the past, patients and families with Huntington's disease have been persecuted by the Nazis, by the eugenics movement. In the 20s, in the 20s in the US, patients and families with Huntington's disease were forcibly sterilized as part of the eugenics movement. So there's been a lot of stigma about the disease and the genetics, and that's something that we're working very hard to change. We want to make it something people will talk about and not be ashamed of. I think my advice when I talk to early career neuroscientists or early career researchers is don't give up. I think resilience is the one thing that you have to learn, in that we all have failures. Experiments don't work. You get grant rejections with reviews that are upsetting. You'll get paper rejections. And again, you have to not take things personally. You have to dust yourself down, get on with it, and remember the mission. And I think that's, for me, is learning resilience. I think when I first got my first paper rejected, as a first group, I started my own research group as a clinician scientist, and it was my first paper as a senior author rejected, and it was really negative reviews, and I cried. And then my mentor at the time, Professor Charles Wiseman, said, that's not going to help. You just have to dust yourself down, get on with it. And I think learning resilience is the most important thing. Everyone fails, and you have to use that failure to learn and move on. Absolutely. This is a event to network, to meet other neuroscientists, to hear more about cutting edge research, and to make the contacts needed for collaboration throughout the UK and enabling UK neuroscience.